Danny Hart scribbled notes on his datapad, while Professor Tilwyn explained the basics of cross-species conflict theory. The classroom held 37 students from different corners of the galaxy, and Danny was the only human among them. Station Gamma 7 orbited a distant moon, serving as one of the few universities that accepted students from dangerous worlds. Humans qualified as Class 9 Deathworlders, a label that came with assumptions Danny tried hard to ignore. He sat in the back corner, preferring the quiet spot where he could focus on his xenobiology studies without drawing attention. The curved metallic walls displayed holographic diagrams of various alien anatomies, information Danny found fascinating. Outside the large windows, stars glittered against the black void of space. This was his third month on the station, and he still felt the weight of being different. The Ranoff students sat in the middle rows, 10 of them clustered together like they always did. They were massive insectoid beings, standing nearly 8 feet tall even when seated. Their chitinous exoskeletons gleamed dark brown and black under the classroom lights. Each had 4 eyes arranged in pairs and mandibles that clicked when they spoke. Their multiple limbs made them look even more intimidating. Grick was their leader, marked by distinctive scars across his upper carapace. For weeks, he had made comments just loud enough for Danny to hear. Soft pink weakling, overrated deathworlder. Today was no different. Grick leaned toward his companions and chittered something that made them all turn and stare at Danny. Their mandibles clicked in what passed for Ranoff laughter. Danny kept his eyes on his notes. He had not come to space to fight. He wanted to study alien biology, to understand the creatures that humans would share the galaxy with. Fighting would prove nothing except that violence solved problems, and Danny knew better than that. Professor Tilwyn raised 2 of his 4 arms, signaling the end of the lecture. Break time. The professor gathered his materials and walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing on the metal floor. Students rose from their seats, stretching limbs of various shapes and sizes. Some headed for the doors, others gathered in small groups to discuss the lecture. Danny packed his datapad and stood. He needed to reach the library before his next class. As he stepped into the aisle, a large shadow blocked his path. Grick stood there, towering over him. The other 9 Ranoff moved behind Danny, forming a semicircle that cut off any escape route. Danny felt his heart rate increase but kept his face calm. Other students noticed the confrontation. Conversation stopped. Aliens turned to watch. Some pulled out small recording devices that floated in the air, capturing multiple angles. Within seconds, a ring of spectators formed around them. Danny recognized this pattern from human history, public challenges, dominance displays. He wanted no part of it. Grick's mandibles spread wide in an aggressive display. His 4 eyes focused on Danny with clear hostility. When he spoke, his voice came out as a series of clicks and hisses that the translation implant in Danny's ear converted to words. You humans think you are so tough, so dangerous. Prove it. Show us why Earth is a Class 9 world, or admit you are nothing special. Danny took a slow breath. I'm here to study, not fight. There's nothing to prove. The Ranoff behind him chittered with laughter. Grick leaned closer, his massive form casting Danny in shadow. That is what cowards say. In Ranoff culture, words mean nothing without strength to support them. You are weak. Your species is weak. Danny felt the familiar cold calculation settling into his mind, the combat training every human learned before traveling off-world. Earth had taught its children well. The galaxy was dangerous, and humans needed to know how to survive. But Danny pushed those instincts down. He did not want this. Please step aside, Danny said quietly. I have no quarrel with you. Grick's response was a hard shove with 2 of his limbs. The force sent Danny stumbling backward. His shoulders hit the edge of a desk and he fell, crashing against the furniture. Pain shot through his back. His head struck something hard. When Danny touched his forehead, his fingers came away red with blood. The watching aliens gasped. Some recording devices moved closer. Danny sat there for a moment trying to process what had just happened. He had done nothing wrong. He had tried to walk away. He had been polite, respectful even, and still violence found him. He pushed himself up slowly, using the desk for support. Blood ran down the side of his face, warm and sticky. His gray station jumpsuit had torn at the shoulder. Danny stood and wiped the blood with the back of his hand. The pain helped him focus. Grick stood in the center of the semicircle, looking pleased with himself. The other 9 Ranoth clicked their mandibles in approval. They thought this was over. They thought Danny would run or submit or cry for help. They did not understand humans at all. Danny's posture shifted. His weight centered over his feet. His hands hung loose at his sides, ready but not threatening. The diplomatic mask he wore dropped away, replaced by something the aliens did not recognize. Every human carried this inside them, buried deep. Earth had carved it into their genes over millions of years. Predator instinct, survival drive, the willingness to do whatever it took to stay alive. He looked at Grick with eyes that had changed. No fear, no anger, just cold assessment. Danny had studied Ranoth anatomy for his xenobiology class. He knew where their nerve clusters were located, which joints bent which direction, how their exoskeletons protected some areas while leaving others vulnerable. He had not wanted to use that knowledge, but Grick had made the choice for both of them. "Back off," Danny said, his voice quiet but carrying across the silent classroom. "Please." The Ranoth laughed. Grick raised one clawed limb high, preparing to strike Danny across the face. The claw extended, sharp and dangerous. The watching aliens held their breath. Recording devices captured every angle. This was the moment that would change everything. Grick's arm swung down in a wide arc, fast and powerful. Danny's hand moved faster. His fingers closed around Grick's wrist, stopping the strike inches from his face. The impact of the catch echoed through the classroom. Grick's 4 eyes went wide with shock. His mandibles froze mid-click. The other 9 Ranoth stopped laughing. The entire room went silent. Danny held Grick's arm in an iron grip, his expression showing nothing but focused intensity. 30 seconds. That was all the time it would take. 30 seconds to end this fight and prove that humans earned their Class 9 rating for very good reasons. Time seemed to stretch in that frozen moment. Danny held Grick's attacking limb steady while his mind processed options at incredible speed. The training he received before leaving Earth kicked in automatically, muscle memory taking over where conscious thought would be too slow. Every human learned to fight before going to space, because the galaxy did not forgive weakness. Danny twisted Grick's arm using the joint weakness he knew existed in Ranoth anatomy. The massive alien stumbled forward, off balance. Danny stepped aside and used Grick's own momentum to send him crashing into 2 of his companions. 3 Ranoth went down in a tangle of chitinous limbs and confused clicking. The remaining 7 attacked at once. They thought numbers would overwhelm him. They were wrong. Danny moved between them like water flowing around rocks, each motion precise and purposeful. A Ranoth charged from his left. Danny dropped low and swept the creature's legs. The alien's own weight worked against him as he toppled forward and slammed into the floor with a metallic crash. 2 more grabbed at Danny from opposite sides. He recognized the tactic, meant to pin his arms. Instead of resisting, Danny let himself fall backward, pulling both Ranoth down with him. At the last second, he planted his feet in their midsections and pushed hard. Both aliens flew over his head and crashed into desks behind him. The furniture shattered under their combined weight. The watching crowd of alien students pressed closer, their shock visible in a dozen different ways. Some had never seen a human fight before. Others thought they knew what to expect and were learning they knew nothing at all. Recording devices swarmed through the air, capturing every angle of the impossible scene unfolding before them. A Ranoth tried to tackle Danny from behind. Danny heard the chittering sound of the alien's approach and sidestepped at the last instant. The charging Ranoth hit nothing but air and careened into the wall. The impact left a dent in the metal. Danny used a desk as a springboard and drove his elbow into the nerve cluster behind the alien's head. The Rannoth collapsed, unconscious. Grick had recovered and came at Danny with renewed fury. His pride demanded victory now. He could not lose to a smaller, weaker creature in front of so many witnesses. Rannoth culture valued physical dominance above all else. This defeat would mark Grick for life unless he could turn it around. But Danny was not thinking about Rannoth culture or pride or witnesses. He was thinking about ending the threat as quickly as possible with minimum permanent damage. His strikes targeted nerve clusters, joint weak points, and pressure areas. Each hit was calculated to disable without killing. Humans learned long ago that dead enemies created more problems than living ones. Danny caught Grick's next punch and redirected it into another Rannoth's face. The sound of chitin cracking echoed through the classroom. He spun and delivered a kick to Grick's knee joint, right where the exoskeleton segments connected. Grick's leg buckled and he went down on one side. 5 Rannoth remained standing. They circled Danny more carefully now, no longer underestimating him. Their mandibles clicked in what might have been communication or simply fear. Danny's breathing came hard but steady. Sweat mixed with the blood on his face. His torn jumpsuit hung loose at the shoulder, but he showed no signs of slowing down. One of the Rannoth pulled out a ceremonial blade. The weapon gleamed under the classroom lights, a curved piece of sharpened metal used in Rannoth honor challenges. Several aliens in the watching crowd gasped. Weapons changed everything. This was no longer just a fight. This could become a killing. Danny's expression did not change. He had trained for armed opponents too. Earth had prepared its children for every possibility. The Rannoth with the blade advanced slowly, holding the weapon in 2 of his 4 limbs. The other 4 Rannoth spread out, trying to flank Danny while the blade kept his attention forward. Bad tactics. Danny recognized the pattern immediately. The blade was meant to intimidate, to make him focus on the visible threat while others attacked from behind. It was the kind of move that worked on prey animals, not on apex predators. And humans, whatever else they might be, were very much predators. Danny moved first. He grabbed a broken piece of desk and threw it at the Rannoth with the blade. The alien flinched, raising the weapon to block. In that instant of distraction, Danny closed the distance. His hand snapped out and grabbed the wrist holding the blade. His other hand struck the nerve cluster in the Rannoth's upper arm. The alien's grip went slack and the blade clattered to the floor. Danny kicked the weapon away and spun the disarmed Rannoth into the path of 2 others trying to rush him from behind. All 3 went down in a heap. Danny scooped up the fallen blade in one smooth motion. Now he was armed and they were not. The balance of power shifted completely. Grick struggled to his feet, favoring his damaged leg. The last 2 standing Rannoth looked at him for guidance. Their leader was injured. Their weapon was gone. 7 of their group lay scattered across the classroom floor, groaning or unconscious. And the small human stood in the center of it all, holding their own blade, not even breathing that hard. Danny pointed the blade at Grick's throat. The watching aliens fell completely silent. Even the recording devices seemed to pause in midair. This was the moment. Danny could end it here. In Rannoth culture, a throat cut was the traditional way to finish an honor duel. Grick had challenged him publicly. Danny had every right to kill him. But Danny was not Rannoth. He was human, and humans understood that mercy was its own kind of strength. "Yield," Danny said quietly. Grick's mandibles trembled. His 4 eyes stared at the blade mere inches from his vital arteries. Pride warred with survival instinct. Every part of his cultural programming told him to fight to the death rather than submit. But something in Danny's eyes made him hesitate. This human would kill if forced to. There was no doubt about that, but he clearly did not want to. He was offering a choice. Grick lowered his head slowly, exposing his throat completely. In Rannoth body language, it was the ultimate submission. "I yield," he clicked out, his voice barely audible. Danny stepped back and lowered the blade. The entire fight had lasted exactly 31 seconds. Station security arrived 3 minutes later to find a scene that looked like a disaster zone. Desks lay shattered across the floor. 10 Ranoth students sat against the walls, sporting various injuries: broken mandibles, cracked chitin, unconscious or groaning in pain. And in the center of it all stood Danny Hart, still holding the ceremonial blade, his clothes torn and blood running down his face from the cut on his forehead. The lead security officer was a Therision named Court, built like a walking boulder with gray, stone-like skin. He took one look at the situation and raised his weapon, pointing it at Danny. "Drop the blade and step away from the students." Danny carefully placed the blade on the floor and raised his hands. "They attacked me first. I defended myself." Court's eyes moved across the 10 injured Ranoth, then to the watching crowd of alien students. "All of you, against one human." "Check the recordings," Danny said calmly. "Every student here was filming." That got Court's attention. Within minutes, security had collected 37 different recordings from the alien students who witnessed everything. The footage showed the same story from multiple angles: Grick blocking Danny's path, the verbal confrontation, the shove that started it all, and then Danny's systematic takedown of all 10 Ranoth in half a minute of brutal efficiency. Court watched the primary recording 3 times. His stone face showed no emotion, but his eyes narrowed. "You are trained." "Every human who leaves Earth receives combat training," Danny explained. "It's mandatory. The galaxy is dangerous for us." "Dangerous for you," Court gestured at the injured Ranoth. "You put 10 warriors in the medical bay in 30 seconds. You are the danger." Danny said nothing. What could he say? The evidence spoke for itself. He had done exactly what Court accused him of. The fact that he acted in self-defense might save him from serious consequences, but it would not change the reality. He had hurt 10 beings badly enough to require medical attention. Security took Danny to a holding cell while they investigated. The cell was small and bare, with a bench along one wall and a force field instead of a door. Danny sat down and finally allowed himself to feel the pain. His back ached where he hit the desk. His knuckles were scraped and bleeding. The cut on his forehead throbbed, but nothing was broken, nothing serious. He had been lucky. Other aliens began appearing outside his cell. Word had spread fast. The human who dropped 10 Ranoth was being held in security. Students came to look, to point, to whisper among themselves. Some looked afraid. Others seemed fascinated. A few nodded with what might have been respect. Then an unexpected visitor arrived. An elderly Ranoth, much larger than Grick, with a carapace marked by decades of scars. 2 younger Ranoth accompanied him, guards or assistants perhaps. The old one gestured and security deactivated the force field. He stepped inside Danny's cell and the field reactivated behind him. "I am Throck, elder of Grick's hive family," the old Ranoth said. His voice carried weight and authority. "I have come to see the human who defeated my descendant." Danny stood, unsure what to expect. "I did not want to fight. I tried to walk away." Throck's mandibles clicked softly. "Yes, I saw the recordings. You showed remarkable restraint. You could have killed Grick easily. You chose not to." "Killing him would have solved nothing." "A human philosophy," Throck observed. "Ranoth believe killing solves many things. It is our way, but I am old enough to know that not all ways are good ways." He moved closer, studying Danny with ancient eyes. Grick was being prepared for military command. He is strong, aggressive, confident, but he had grown arrogant. He believed himself superior to all others. Your defeat taught him a valuable lesson. "What lesson is that?" "That strength without wisdom is weakness. That underestimating your opponent is suicide. That pride comes before the fall." Throck's mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. "You did not just defeat Grick. You educated him. For this, his hive family is grateful." Danny had not expected gratitude. "I just wanted to go to the library." Throck made a sound like chittering laughter. The best teachers never intend to teach. They simply act according to their nature and others learn from observing. You are free to go, human. I will speak with the station commander. True to his word, Throck's intervention changed everything. The university board convened an emergency meeting to discuss the incident. Human Embassy sent a representative, Officer Lisa Reynolds, who explained standard human combat training protocols. She showed the board videos of human children learning to fight, explaining that Earth's brutal environment required such preparation. Humans do not teach combat for glory or sport, Lisa told the assembled board members. We teach it for survival. Danny Hart held back significantly during that fight. If he wanted to kill those students, they would be dead. Instead, they are all expected to make full recoveries. The board reviewed all evidence. They watched the recordings. They interviewed witnesses. They examined Danny's academic record, which showed nothing but dedication to his xenobiology studies. Finally, they reached a decision. No one would be expelled. The 10 Ranoff students would attend mandatory anger management and cultural sensitivity workshops. Danny would attend similar training focused on de-escalation techniques. The university would implement new policies about physical confrontation, and life would go on. But everything had changed. When Danny walked through the campus corridors after his release, aliens stepped aside. Conversations stopped when he passed. Students pointed and whispered. The recordings of his fight had spread beyond the station, uploaded to the Galactic Network. Billions of beings across hundreds of worlds had watched a single human systematically dismantle 10 trained Ranoff warriors. Danny Hart had become famous, and he hated every second of it. He had come to space to study alien biology in peace. Instead, he had become a living demonstration of why humans were classified as dangerous. The irony was not lost on him. His datapad buzzed constantly with messages. Interview requests from news organizations, challenges from warriors wanting to test themselves against him, marriage proposals from species that valued combat prowess, friend requests from thousands of beings he had never met. Danny ignored them all. He just wanted to go back to being a normal student, but normal was no longer an option. The galaxy had seen what humans could do when pushed, and nothing would ever be the same again. 2 weeks passed, and Danny still could not escape his unwanted fame. Every class he attended became a spectacle. Students who never cared about xenobiology suddenly wanted to audit his courses. The lecture halls filled with aliens hopping to catch a glimpse of the human who fought 10 Ranoff. Professors struggled to maintain order while cameras recorded Danny simply sitting and taking notes. He tried eating in different cafeterias at random times, but word always spread. Within minutes, crowds would gather. Some wanted autographs. Others wanted to challenge him. A few just stared like he was an exotic animal in a zoo. Danny found himself eating meals in his quarters more often than not, alone with his studies and his growing frustration. The Ranoff students had an unexpected reaction to their defeat. In their culture, being beaten by a superior warrior created something called a debt bond. The defeated owed the victor knowledge and service until the debt was repaid through learning. Grick took this obligation seriously. Everywhere Danny went, Grick followed. At first, Danny tried to discourage this. He did not want a 7-foot insectoid shadow following him around campus, but Grick proved impossible to shake. He waited outside Danny's quarters each morning. He sat behind Danny in every class. He even tried to follow Danny into the human-only sections of the station until security stopped him. Finally, Danny confronted him in the hallway between classes. "Why are you doing this?" Grick's mandibles clicked uncertainly. "I must learn from you. It is the Ranoff way. You defeated me. I am bound to you until I understand how. I beat you because I had training and you underestimated me. There. Lesson learned. Go away." "No," Grick's 4 eyes fixed on Danny with surprising intensity. "You could have killed me. You held back. Why? Ranoff do not show mercy to defeated enemies. We finish what we start. Your restraint makes no sense to me." Danny sighed. This was going to be harder than he thought. Killing you would have made me a murderer. You were not trying to kill me. You just wanted to prove you were stronger. Why should I kill someone over something so stupid? "Because strength is everything," Grick said, as if explaining something obvious to a child. "The strong survive, the weak die. This is universal law." "No, it's not." Danny adjusted his datapad under his arm. "Cooperation survives better than strength alone. Humans learned that millions of years ago. We are not the biggest or strongest species on Earth, but we are the smartest. We work together. That is why we survived." Grick's mandibles went still, processing this information. "You fight like a warrior, but you think like a scholar. This is confusing." "Welcome to being human," Danny muttered. "Look, if you are going to follow me around anyway, you might as well be useful. I have a xenobiology exam next week. Want to help me study?" Grick's confusion was visible in every line of his body. "Study? You want me to help you study, not train, not fight?" "I came here to learn, not fight. Fighting was your idea, remember?" This concept seemed to break something in Grick's understanding of the universe. Warriors trained, scholars studied. The two did not mix, but here was Danny, clearly a warrior of exceptional skill, asking for help with schoolwork. It made no sense. And things that made no sense fascinated Grick in ways he could not explain. They met in the library that evening. Danny spread out his notes on a table and began reviewing material about Velcrin digestive systems. Grick sat across from him, massive limbs folded, watching with all four eyes as Danny highlighted important information. "This is what you do?" Grick asked after 20 minutes of silence. "You just read and memorize facts?" "That is how you learn," Danny replied without looking up. "How did you think I knew where to hit you during our fight? I studied Rannoth anatomy last semester, nerve clusters, joint vulnerabilities, circulatory system. I knew exactly where to strike for maximum effect with minimum permanent damage." Grick's mandibles spread in surprise. "You studied my species to learn how to fight us." "I studied your species to understand you. Fighting was just a side effect." Danny looked up from his notes. "If I had wanted to fight Rannoth, I would have joined the military. I wanted to understand alien biology, all of it, not just the parts that help me hurt people." Something changed in Grick's expression. The aggressive certainty that defined Rannoth culture seemed to crack just a little. "You are strange, Danny Hart. You fight with a warrior's skill but hold a scholar's values. You defeat enemies but refuse to kill them. You study species to understand, not to exploit weakness. I do not understand you." "That's okay," Danny said. "Most humans don't understand themselves half the time. We are complicated. It's part of what makes us human." Over the following days, an unlikely friendship began to form. Other students watched in amazement as Danny and Grick spent hours together in the library, cafeteria, and study lounges. The human who defeated 10 Rannoth and the Rannoth who led the attack, now sitting side by side reviewing xenobiology notes. It made no sense to anyone except them. Danny discovered that Grick had a sharp mind beneath all that warrior bluster. When focused on academics instead of dominance, he asked intelligent questions and made connections between concepts that Danny had missed. Grick, in turn, learned that humans valued knowledge as much as strength, maybe more. The two began to understand each other in ways that transcended their species' differences. 3 other human students on the station reached out to Danny during this time. Amy Park studied astrophysics. Robert Okonkwo focused on engineering. Hassan Al-Farsi researched xenopathology. They had all kept low profiles, avoiding the kind of attention Danny now attracted, but they felt obligated to check on their fellow human. They met in a quiet corner of a human-friendly cafe. Amy spoke first. "We saw what happened. Are you okay?" Danny shrugged. "Physically, yes. Emotionally, I'm tired of being famous for something I never wanted to do." Robert nodded. We avoid situations like that, keep our heads down, don't make waves. I tried that, Danny said. It did not work. Hassan leaned forward. The galaxy is watching now. Every human's actions reflect on our entire species. We have to be careful. I was careful. I tried to walk away. They would not let me. Danny's voice carried frustration. What was I supposed to do? Let them beat me up to avoid making waves? Silence fell over the table. The other humans had no answer. They knew Danny was right. Sometimes situations left no good choices. Late evening study sessions became routine for Danny and Grick. The library's upper level stayed open all night, illuminated by soft blue lights that mimicked natural moonlight for species that needed it. They claimed a corner table near the windows overlooking the station's docking rings, where ships came and went in silent streams of light. Danny was reviewing notes on the Risian mineral absorption when heavy footsteps approached their table. He looked up to find 6 massive figures looming over them. Keltherin warriors, even larger than Ranoth, with thick-scaled hides and powerful builds designed for high-gravity worlds. Their leader, a scarred veteran named Drog, stood at the front. "You are Danny Hart," Drog said. It was not a question. "Yes," Danny replied carefully. He recognized the body language. This was another challenge. Would they never stop? "I watched the footage of your fight. 10 Ranoth in 30 seconds. Impressive. But Ranoth are weak compared to Keltherin. I want to see if you can do the same to me." Before Danny could respond, Grick stood. The sudden movement startled the Keltherin. A Ranoth defending a human was unprecedented. "You will not touch him," Grick said, his mandibles spread in threat display. The Keltherin laughed. Drog looked amused. "The defeated protects his defeater. How strange. Step aside, little insect. This is between me and the human." "No," Grick moved to block Danny completely. "You will have to go through me first." Danny put a hand on Grick's shoulder. "Sit down, I've got this." He stood and faced Drog directly. "I am not going to fight you." Drog's amusement faded to confusion. "You refuse my challenge." "Yes. But the recordings show you are a warrior of great skill. Why would you refuse to demonstrate that skill?" Danny gestured at their study materials spread across the table. "Because I am trying to study for an exam. Because fighting you proves nothing except that violence solves disagreements, which it does not. Because I am tired of being challenged by every warrior species in the galaxy who wants to test themselves against the human who beat some Ranoth." "You are afraid," Drog concluded. "No, I am annoyed." Danny met the Keltherin's eyes without flinching. "I did not beat those Ranoth because I am strong. I beat them because they forced me to defend myself and I had no other choice. You know what I did after that fight? I went to medical bay and checked on every one of them. I made sure they were getting proper treatment. I apologized for hurting them even though they attacked me first. Does that sound like someone who wants to fight you?" The Keltherin warriors exchanged glances. This was not the response they expected. Drog tilted his head, studying Danny with new interest. "You checked on your enemies after defeating them." "They were not my enemies. They were students who made a bad decision, just like you are making one right now." Silence stretched between them. The library's ambient sounds, soft conversations and turning pages seemed very loud. Other students had noticed the confrontation and were watching from a safe distance. Recording devices appeared floating in the air, always recording, always watching. Drog made a decision. "Very well, I will not fight you tonight, but I would hear more of your human philosophy, perhaps over drinks." Danny blinked. That was unexpected. "You want to buy me a drink?" "And your Ranoth companion, and my warriors. We can talk instead of fight. This is acceptable to humans, yes." Relief washed through Danny. Finally, someone wanted conversation instead of combat. "Yes, that is very acceptable." They moved to a nearby station cafe that served beverages compatible with multiple species biochemistries. The 8 of them crowded around a large table, an unusual group that drew stares from other patrons. Danny and Grick sat together. The 6 Keltherin took up the other side, their bulk making the furniture look like toys. Drog ordered drinks for everyone and then leaned forward. "Explain to me how humans think. You fight like predators but act like prey. This confuses me." Danny considered his words carefully. "Earth is a dangerous world. Everything there wants to kill you. Weather, animals, diseases, other humans historically. We survive not by being the strongest but by being the smartest. We learn to cooperate. We learn to use tools. We learn to think ahead and plan." "But you are also warriors," one of the other Keltherin pointed out. "The recordings prove this." "We are survivors who learn to fight when necessary," Danny corrected. "There is a difference. Warriors seek combat. Survivors avoid it when possible but are ready when avoidance fails. Humans are survivors first, warriors second." This concept fascinated the Keltherin. In their culture, warrior status was the highest honor, but Danny described it as a backup plan, something you did when better options failed. The idea challenged everything they believed about strength and power. Hassan, Amy, and Robert arrived at the cafe looking for Danny. They stopped short when they saw him sitting with 6 Keltherin warriors and Grick. Amy whispered something to Robert. He shrugged. They approached the table cautiously. "Friends of yours?" Drog asked. "Fellow humans," Danny confirmed. "Amy, Robert, Hassan, meet Drog and his warriors, and you already know Grick." The newcomers sat down carefully, clearly uncertain about this situation. A human having drinks with the species that usually challenged them to fights was unusual enough. Having friendly conversation with them was nearly unheard of. Over the next hour, the discussion expanded to cover human history, culture, and philosophy. The Keltherin asked questions about Earth's wars, wondering why humans fought each other if cooperation was so important. Danny explained tribalism, resource scarcity, and ideological differences. Amy talked about how humans eventually overcame those divisions to reach for the stars. Robert discussed human engineering philosophy, building with available materials rather than waiting for perfect conditions. Other aliens began joining the conversation. A Velcrin student asked about human art. A Therision wanted to know about human family structures. Soon, 20 different species crowded around the table, all wanting to understand the humans among them. Danny found himself at the center of an impromptu cultural exchange, answering questions and asking his own. Professor Tilwyn appeared at some point, drawn by reports of the gathering. He listened for a while, then approached Danny. "I would like you to give a guest lecture on human conflict resolution. Would you be willing?" Danny hesitated. Public speaking was not his strength. "I am just a student." "You are a human who has demonstrated both combat capability and restraint. You have earned respect from warrior species known for respecting nothing but strength, and you did it without wanting to. That makes you the perfect person to explain how humans think." The main auditorium held 300 beings and every seat was filled. Aliens from dozens of species packed the room, standing in the aisles when seats ran out. Danny stood backstage with Amy, Robert, and Hassan, trying to calm his nerves. His datapad displayed the threatening message he received the night before. "Humans don't belong here. Leave or be removed." Security Officer Court had tripled the guard presence after Danny reported the threat. Armed personnel stood at every entrance. Cameras monitored the crowd, but Danny felt exposed anyway. Someone out there wanted him gone badly enough to threaten violence, and crowds made perfect cover for attacks. "You don't have to do this," Amy said quietly. "We can cancel." "No," Danny straightened his shoulders. "Canceling would prove I am afraid, and I refuse to be afraid of people who hide behind anonymous threats." Grick waited in the front row alongside Drog and the other Keltherin. The 10 Ranoth from the original fight sat there too, fully recovered from their injuries. Their presence felt like a show of support, though Danny was not sure he deserved it. He had hurt them after all. Professor Tilwyn introduced Danny to thunderous applause. Danny walked onto the stage, his legs feeling steadier than he expected. He reached the podium and looked out at the sea of alien faces. Hundreds of eyes in dozens of configurations stared back at him. Recording devices floated everywhere. This lecture would be seen across the galaxy. "Thank you for coming," Danny began. "I am not an expert on anything except maybe xenobiology, and even that is debatable since I am still a student. But Professor Tilwyn asked me to talk about how humans approach conflict, so I will try." He advanced his presentation. The first slide showed Earth from space, blue and white and beautiful. "This is my homeworld. It looks peaceful from here. But down on the surface, everything wants to kill you. Predators, diseases, weather, other humans for most of our history. Earth is classified as a Class 9 death world for good reason." Click. The next slide showed human evolution from early primates to modern humans. "We survived not because we were the strongest species on our planet. Lots of animals could kill us easily. We survived because we learned to cooperate. We formed groups. We shared knowledge. We built tools. We adapted." The audience listened intently. Danny relaxed slightly as he fell into the rhythm of teaching, something he had done before as a study group leader. Humans have a saying, "Together we are strong." We did not invent this saying. We lived it for millions of years before we ever spoke it out loud. Cooperation is in our genes. Halfway through his explanation of human conflict resolution strategies, the lights cut out. Emergency lighting activated, bathing the auditorium in red. Screams erupted from the audience. Danny's combat instincts kicked in immediately. He dropped behind the podium, scanning for threats. 15 masked figures rushed the stage from multiple directions. They moved with coordinated precision, clearly planned in advance. Danny recognized different species among the attackers. This was not one group. This was a coalition of human haters from across the galaxy. 2 attackers grabbed Hassan near the stairs. Amy tried to help and got shoved hard. She fell off the stage, crashing into the front row of seats. Robert moved to defend her and took a hit that sent him sprawling. Danny's vision went red. They were attacking his friends, his fellow humans, the people he felt responsible for protecting. He vaulted over the podium and hit the first attacker with a flying kick that sent the masked figure tumbling. But before Danny could engage further, Grick appeared. The Ranoth grabbed an attacker in 2 of his 4 limbs and literally threw the being across the stage. "Touch the humans and die," he roared. Drog and his Keltherin warriors surged from their seats and blocked the side entrances. The 10 Ranoth from Danny's original fight joined them, forming a living wall between the attackers and the stage. Other alien students who had come to respect Danny through their conversations moved to help. Within seconds, the coordinated attack became chaos as the auditorium erupted into defensive action. Danny fought his way to Hassan and freed him from his captors. Amy was already being helped to her feet by a Velcrin student. Robert stood shakily but unharmed. Security forces finally broke through the crowd, weapons drawn. The attackers found themselves surrounded on all sides. It ended in less than 2 minutes. All 15 attackers were subdued and restrained. Security removed their masks to reveal 6 different species, united only by their hatred of human presence in the galaxy. Station Commander Court personally arrested each one, reading charges that would see them expelled and prosecuted. Danny stood on the stage, breathing hard, checking his friends for injuries. The auditorium was in chaos, but no one seemed seriously hurt. He looked out at the hundreds of aliens, many of whom had just fought to protect him and his fellow humans. Grick stood nearby, his chitin scratched but his mandibles spread in something like satisfaction. Drog nursed a bleeding arm but gave Danny a respectful nod. Court approached the stage and addressed the crowd through the auditorium speakers. "This attack will not stand. The perpetrators will face full prosecution. This university stands for cooperation and learning, not violence and hatred. Anyone who cannot accept that can leave voluntarily or be removed." He turned to Danny. "Do you wish to continue your lecture?" Danny looked at the mess, the overturned chairs, the nervous crowd, the recording devices still capturing everything. He thought about giving up, canceling, going back to his quiet life of study. Then he saw Grick watching him, and Drog, and dozens of other aliens who had just risked themselves to protect humans they barely knew. "Yes," Danny said, "this is exactly why we need to talk." The auditorium slowly settled. Beings returned to their seats or found new ones. Danny returned to the podium and pulled up his next slide. "As I was saying, humans are not special because we are strong. We are survivors because we build alliances, because we cooperate, because we understand that our individual strength means nothing compared to what we can accomplish together." He gestured to the aliens who had defended them. "What just happened proves my point better than any lecture could. Those attackers planned their assault carefully. They chose their moment. They had numbers and surprise, and they failed completely. Why? Because dozens of you from different species, different cultures, different worlds, all chose to work together to stop them. That is the power of cooperation. That is what humans learned millions of years ago, and that is what we hope to teach the galaxy." The applause started slowly, but built to a roar. Not just polite academic applause, but genuine enthusiasm. Danny finished his lecture to a standing ovation from hundreds of aliens who now understood humans just a little bit better. Afterward, Grick approached. "You did not just drop 10 Ranoff that day in the classroom. You taught us that strength without wisdom is worthless, that cooperation beats individual power, that humans are worth knowing, not just fighting." Drog added, "You came here to study our biology. Instead, you taught us your philosophy. I think you got the better trade." Danny smiled, exhausted but satisfied. "I came here to learn about aliens. Turns out, you all taught me about being human." 3 months later, Danny sat in a conference room on Earth, defending his thesis to a panel of human academics. His research paper, "Conflict Resolution Through Cultural Understanding, a Practical Approach," drew heavily from his interviews with 42 different alien students. The panel asked tough questions. Danny answered them all with the confidence of someone who had lived his research. He passed with honors. As he left the building, his datapad chimed with an incoming video call. Grick, Drog, Amy, Robert, Hassan, and a dozen other friends from the station crowded into the frame. "Congratulations, Dr. Hart," they shouted in unison, the translation implant struggling with multiple languages at once. Danny laughed. "Not a doctor yet, just a graduate." "Close enough," Grick clicked. "When are you coming back? The cafeteria conversations are boring without you." "Soon," Danny promised. "But first I need some time on Earth, being anonymous again. No one challenging me to fights. No cameras following me, just normal life for a while." They talked for another hour across light years, sharing updates and jokes. When the call finally ended, Danny walked through Earth streets with a smile on his face. He had gone to space to prove humans could be more than warriors. And somehow, by fighting when he had no choice, by making friends with former enemies, by teaching cooperation through example, he had succeeded. The galaxy would never stop seeing humans as dangerous. Class 9 Deathworlders would always carry that classification. But maybe now they would also see humans as teachers, friends, and allies. People worth knowing, not just avoiding. Danny Hart had not set out to change the galaxy. He had just wanted to study xenobiology in peace. But sometimes the best changes happen when you are not trying to make them. Sometimes you just have to be yourself, stand up when necessary, and trust that others will see the value in what you represent. And sometimes that is enough.